have some good news. Instead of the kids, my mother and brother are coming on vacation with us," my husband David announced on the day of our departure. But my good news in response made him turn pale. Anne did a final check of the suitcases, carefully placing the kids' sun hats next to the sunscreen. Tomorrow, at this time, they'd be on the beach in Miami, and the thought warmed her better than any coffee. 6 months of planning, booking, and anticipation, it was all finally coming to life. "Mom, can I take all my dinosaurs?" Alex, her 5-year-old son, stood in the doorway, a heap of plastic toys in his arms, examining them seriously, as if making a life-altering decision. "Take your 3 favorites. The rest will wait for us at home," Anne replied, smiling at the stubborn expression on his little face. Alex nodded and delved into the selection process, muttering something about how the T-Rex was essential, but the pterodactyl could probably wait. 8-year-old Mia was methodically packing her things into a pink backpack her grandmother had given her for her birthday. The girl had inherited her mother's organizational skills and had prepared everything she needed for the trip the night before. Swimsuits, sundresses, shorts, and T-shirts lay in neat piles on her bed. Beside them stood new sandals Anne had bought specially for the vacation, brightly shining with glittery straps. "Mom, can you really see dolphins in Miami?" she asked, tucking her favorite book about sea creatures into her backpack. "Of course, sweetie, and not just see them, but swim with them at the marine park." Anne knelt beside her daughter and smoothed her hair. "And we'll go on an airboat ride in the Everglades, see amazing birds, and try the most delicious ice cream on Ocean Drive." Mia's eyes lit up. "And will we swim in the ocean every day?" "Every single day, as much as you want. In the morning, we'll swim and sunbathe. During the day, we'll explore the city, and in the evening, we'll stroll along the boardwalk and eat ice cream." Anne mentally reviewed their 2-week vacation itinerary once more. The first few days settling in beach hotel pool, then an excursion to a nature reserve, a visit to a historical site, a walk through a botanical garden. The kids would be thrilled with the aquarium, and a trip to a scenic overlook would be a real adventure. She'd even booked a table at a restaurant with a panoramic ocean view for their anniversary with David, which fell right in the middle of the trip. David sat in the living room with his laptop pretending to work, but Anne could see he was looking at his phone more than the screen. After 8 years together, she'd learned to read him like an open book. Right now, he was definitely worried about something, but trying to hide it. His fingers tapped nervously on the table, his gaze darting from the screen to the window, and a familiar wrinkle, which always betrayed his anxiety, appeared on his forehead. "Dave, have you packed your things?" she called out from the bedroom, stuffing the last few small items into a suitcase. Yeah, all set," he answered, but his voice sounded distracted, as if his thoughts were far from the upcoming vacation. Anne frowned. He'd been strange last night, too, answering in monosyllables, constantly distracted by his phone. When she asked what was wrong, he'd brushed it off, saying he was just tired. She attributed it to pre-vacation stress. He'd genuinely been swamped at work. A project was due today, and he'd only managed to wrap it up in the evening. But something in his behavior was unsettling. Usually before a vacation, David became animated, made plans, suggested new places to visit. Now he seemed to be avoiding any talk about the trip, changing the subject when the kids started discussing the upcoming fun. Their marriage couldn't be called perfect. Over 8 years enough, problems had accumulated, the main one being named Susan Ann's mother-in-law. Susan had an amazing talent for showing up at the most inopportune moments with her urgent problems. One time, she urgently needed to move old furniture precisely on the weekend the young family had planned a trip to the lake. Another time, she'd suddenly fall ill on the day they were going to the theater. Or she'd have heart episodes whenever David tried to set some boundaries in their relationship. Anne had long realized she was dealing with a professional manipulator, but David, despite being 34, still hadn't learned to tell his mother no. Each time he'd make excuses, she was lonely, he was her only son, they needed to be more patient with an elderly person. Anne tolerated it, but it became harder each year, especially when her mother-in-law's interference concerned their children. Susan considered herself the ultimate parenting expert and constantly criticized Anne's decisions. Their diet was wrong. She dressed the kids inappropriately for the weather. She was too strict, or conversely, too lenient. She particularly pushed her attempts to mold the children according to her ideas of what grandchildren should be. She constantly bought Alex military-style action figures, even though the boy preferred dinosaurs and building blocks. She tried to get Mia interested in needlecraft and cooking, ignoring the girl's passion for books and drawing. And then there was David's brother Kevin, a 28-year-old man-child who only knew how to ask for money and create problems. One time, he'd wrecked their dad's car, and they urgently needed to pay for repairs. Another time, he was fired from yet another job for absenteeism and needed money to live on until he found new employment. Or he'd get involved with shady people and then ask to be bailed out of trouble. And each time, David, sighing and muttering about family duty, would pull out his wallet. Over the last 2 years, Kevin had borrowed an amount from them that could have bought a new car. Anne kept a precise account of all these temporary difficulties and small requests for help. None of that money was ever returned. When she tried to bring it up, David would brush her off, saying family was more important than money. Easy for him to say when he wasn't the one denying himself new clothes and budgeting down to the last penny. But this vacation was supposed to be an exception. Anne had spent months planning, sifted through dozens of review sites, studied all the attractions in Miami, booked a great hotel with a playground and pool, and bought plane tickets on sale back in January. The kids were counting down the days, and Mia had even made a special calendar where she crossed off each passing day with a red marker. This vacation wasn't just a break for her. It was a chance to finally be a family without Susan's constant interference, without calls from Kevin, with his usual pleas for help, without the need to visit Susan every weekend. 2 weeks just for the 4 of them, a dream she'd cherished for 6 months. "Mom, is it true they give you free cookies on the plane?" Alex ran to her, a dinosaur in his hand, already dressed in a new t-shirt with a whale on it. "It's true, and juice and nuts, too." Anne scooped her son into her arms. "Are you ready for your first flight?" "Ready!" "And if the plane crashes, the dinosaur will protect me," the boy declared seriously, clutching the plastic toy. Anne laughed. "The plane won't crash, and the dinosaur will guard your sleep during the flight, and he'll help you explore new places in Miami." "Are there real dinosaurs there?" Alex asked hopefully. "No real ones, but there's a museum where you can see their skeletons and a huge aquarium with sharks and rays. They're ancient, like dinosaurs." Alex nodded with interest and ran off to tell his sister about the upcoming discoveries. That evening, when the kids had finally settled down and fallen asleep overexcited about the upcoming trip, Anne snuggled up next to her husband on the couch. Tomorrow at 7:00 a.m. their taxi would arrive, at 9:00 a.m. their flight, and by afternoon they were supposed to check into the Ocean Breeze Hotel overlooking the Atlantic. "I can't believe we're finally flying out tomorrow," she said, leaning back on the pillows. "Feels like I've been planning this trip forever. Remember when I showed you pictures of the hotel and the tour schedule?" David nodded, but his gaze was distant. His phone vibrated in his hand again for the 3rd time that evening. "Who is that?" Anne asked, starting to get irritated. "It's work, right? But tomorrow's Saturday. You said you finished everything." "It's Mom," David mumbled, declining the call. "Probably something minor. You know how she worries when we go somewhere." Anne grimaced. Yes, she knew perfectly well how Susan worried. Every time they planned a trip, her mother-in-law found a reason for concern. Planes were unsafe, or there was some epidemic in Miami, or the hotel seemed suspicious. And if she couldn't convince them, urgent matters requiring her son's presence would suddenly arise. The phone rang again and again. On the 4th ring, Anne couldn't take it anymore. "Answer it or she'll keep calling all night and we won't get any sleep before our trip." David reluctantly answered. "Hello, Mom. Yes, I remember about tomorrow's flight. No, we're flying out tomorrow morning, I told you. Mom, we discussed this a month ago." Anne watched as her husband's face gradually darkened. He kept glancing at her guiltily, saying something quickly into the phone, clearly trying to end the conversation. The fingers of his free hand nervously picked at the edge of the sofa. Okay, I'll think about it. Yes, I understand he's your son. No, I don't know. I'll call you back. Finally, he hung up and rubbed his forehead as if he had a headache. What happened? Anne felt a knot of dread in her stomach. She knew Susan too well to believe she'd call for no reason on the last day before their vacation. Nothing special. Mom's worried about Kevin. He's in trouble again. What kind of trouble? Anne's voice hardened. She knew exactly what Kevin's trouble meant. Usually, it required immediate intervention from his older brother and, as a rule, significant financial investment. He's being evicted from his apartment, hasn't paid rent for 3 months. The landlord gave him an ultimatum, either pay the debt by the end of the week or get out with all his stuff. And how much does he owe? Anne was already mentally calculating the sum her husband was about to name. $4,000. David said quietly, as if hoping she wouldn't hear. Anne whistled. Wow, for 3 months' rent. Was he renting a mansion? There's probably utilities, late fees, some additional payments too. And what did you tell Mom? David hesitated, and that was an answer in itself. That we're flying out tomorrow, and can't help that we spent the money on vacation. Anne looked at her husband intently. Over the years of marriage, she'd learned to recognize his lies. When David wasn't telling the truth or was hiding something important, he avoided eye contact, fidgeted with something, and often licked his lips. He was doing all 3 things now. David, tell me straight. What does your mother want from you? Well, basically, she asked if we could take Kevin with us, at least for a week until he finds a new place and sorts out his money problems. Nisei, Anne slowly sat up straight. What do you mean, take him with us to Miami? Mom says he needs a distraction from his problems, and the sea air will do him good. Maybe he'll find a job there, meet people. And the kids? What about the kids? David feigned incomprehension, but his gaze shifted to the window. David, look me in the eye and tell me honestly, what is your mother suggesting we do with our children if we take your brother on vacation? He swallowed hard. She's willing to watch them. Says it's better for the kids to stay in the city than to be dragged around in the heat, that August in Miami is too humid for little ones, that it's better to wait until September. Anne felt the blood rush to her face. So your mother is proposing we leave our children who've been waiting for this trip for 6 months and go on vacation with your man-child brother. And don't yell, the kids will wake up. I'm not yelling. Yet. Anne was speaking quietly, but there was steel in her voice. And what did you tell her? I said I'd think about it. Think about it. Anne stood up from the sofa and began pacing the room. What is there to think about? This is our family vacation, the kids' first trip to the ocean. Mia has been learning the names of all the Atlantic fish for 6 months, writing them down in a special notebook. Alex asks every day how many days are left until the trip and falls asleep with his little backpack under his pillow. I understand, but what? But your 28-year-old brother is more important than your own children. It's not about that. It's just that Kevin is really in a tough situation. Kevin is always in a tough situation. I don't care how old he is. He's a grown man who should solve his own problems, not hang on his older brother's neck every time something goes wrong. Kevin's just going through a rough patch. Kevin's been going through a rough patch for about 10 years, and every time there are people who bail him out, your mom, you, your relatives, neighbors, friends, he's used to having everything solved for him, all problems eliminated, all debts paid. David was silent, staring at the floor. Anne sat back down on the sofa, trying to calm down. Anger seethed inside her, but she knew she had to speak calmly or her husband wouldn't understand a thing. Dave, listen to me carefully. I spent months planning this trip. I studied every hotel review, chose the best excursions, booked a table at that restaurant for our anniversary. The kids are waiting for this vacation like it's the most important event of their lives. The hotel is booked, tickets are bought, excursions are paid for, and now your mother suggests giving it all up for your brother and leaving the kids in her care. Mom's good with them. Your mother thinks kids should be fed sweets for breakfast, that a 5-year-old should go to bed at 10 p.m., and that cartoons can be watched for 8 hours a day. Need I remind you what happened last time we left the kids with her for a weekend?" David winced. That incident had indeed been telling. Returning from a short trip to a friend's birthday, Anne had found the children stuffed with candy to the point of vomiting Mia with a fever from being out in rainy weather without a hat, and Alex with an upset stomach from an abundance of ice cream and soda. Susan had sworn nothing special happened. The kids were just a little spoiled. That was an exception. That was a pattern. Your mother doesn't know how to handle children. She spoils them to absurdity and then wonders why they don't listen. She thinks love for grandchildren is measured by the number of candies given and cartoons allowed. Anne stood up and started pacing again, gathering her thoughts. But that's not even the point. The point is that you are seriously considering canceling our family vacation for your brother's whim. Not cancel, just change. Cancel. Because a vacation without the kids is not a family vacation. It's anything but what we planned for 6 months. It's not what our children have been waiting for. David's phone rang again. His mother's name flashed on the screen. "Don't you dare answer it," Anne said harshly. "Don't you dare. We haven't finished talking." David obediently declined the call, but Anne saw how nervous he was. For him, refusing his mother was tantamount to betrayal. Even at 34, he feared his mother's displeasure more than his own wife's anger. "Listen to me carefully." She sat opposite him and made him look her in the eye. "Tomorrow morning, the kids and I are flying to Miami. That's final. Let your brother solve his own problems, and let your mother find other ways to help him." "But Mom has already organized everything. She's ready to take the kids. Kevin's waiting. She even booked him an extra spot at the hotel." "Stop!" Anne jumped up from the sofa. "What do you mean, booked a spot at the hotel? When did she manage to do that?" David realized he'd said too much. "Well, last night, just in case." Just in case. So this was all planned in advance. Your mother had already decided everything, and today's call was just a notification of the decision made. Not exactly. Exactly like that. She wasn't asking, she was telling you, and you understand that perfectly well. Mom just wanted to be prepared for all options. David, do you seriously think it's normal to book a hotel room for someone on the last day before a vacation without asking the consent of those who planned and paid for that vacation? This isn't a request. It's pure manipulation. David was silent, but Anne saw he was wavering, and that meant the decision wasn't final yet, and that scared her most of all. "Fine," she said, standing up. "I'm going to bed. You think about what I said, and remember the taxi arrives at 7 a.m. tomorrow. Whether you're in it or not is your choice. But the kids and I are flying as planned." She headed for the bedroom, but turned at the doorway. "And one more thing, David. This isn't the first time your family has tried to ruin our plans. But it might be the last, because my patience has a limit." In the bedroom, she lay awake for a long time, listening to the quiet sounds from the living room. David was pacing the apartment. Several times she heard the muffled sound of a phone conversation. Anne knew he was discussing the situation with his mother, possibly with his brother. And with every minute, it became clearer that tomorrow would bring unpleasant surprises. In the morning, Anne woke up to the sound of her alarm, 6:30 a.m., half an hour until the taxi arrived. David was asleep beside her, his face contorted in torment even in sleep. The night had clearly been difficult. She got up quietly so as not to wake him and went to wake the children. Mia was already awake, lying in bed with wide-open eyes, hugging a plush dolphin. "Mom, are we really flying today?" the girl whispered. "Of course, sweetie. Get up, we need to get ready." Alex woke up easily as always. Seeing his mother, he immediately jumped out of bed. "The ocean! We're going to the ocean," he shouted, forgetting his morning moodiness. "Quiet, quiet, Daddy's still asleep," Anne soothed him. "Let's go have breakfast, and then we'll go to the airport." The children quickly dressed and ran to the kitchen. Anne made them their favorite cheese sandwiches and hot tea with honey. She checked documents, money tickets. Everything was ready for departure. At exactly 7:00 a.m., the taxi honked in the driveway. David finally got up. He looked exhausted and bewildered, as if he'd been solving a complex problem all night and still hadn't found the right answer. "Anne, I need to tell you something." He began scratching the back of his head and avoiding eye contact. "That's the taxi," Anne said, picking up a suitcase. "Talk on the way. Kids, grab your backpacks. Check if you've forgotten anything." Mia and Alex bustled around excitedly grabbing their things. The girl carefully took her backpack and a small purse with documents that her mother had entrusted her to carry. Alex grabbed a bag of toys and the dinosaur he'd decided to take on the plane. Anne carried the large suitcase into the hallway and started putting on her jacket. "Help with the luggage," she asked her husband. David hesitated, still standing in the bedroom doorway in his pajamas. "Dave, we're late. The driver's waiting. Anne, I really need to tell you something," he repeated, and a desperate note sounded in his voice. Just then, her cell phone rang, an unknown number on the display. "Hello, Annie, dear, it's Susan." Her mother-in-law's sickeningly sweet voice came through the phone. "I'm on my way to your place. I'll be there soon. Get the kids ready. We're about to pick them up." Anne's breath caught. "What do you mean pick them up?" "Well, darling, didn't Davy tell you? We decided the kids would stay with a neighbor and we'd all go and have a good rest. My boys so need this vacation after all their stress." Anne slowly turned to her husband. He stood there with a guilty face, not daring to look up. In his hands, he was nervously crumpling the t-shirt he was about to put on. "Susan?" Anne's voice turned to ice. "What the hell do you think you're doing?" "Annie, don't swear in front of the children. It's all decided. Davy agreed last night. Kevin's already packed, waiting in the car downstairs." Anne ended the call and stared at her husband. The children stood nearby with their backpacks, not understanding what was happening. Mia frowned, sensing the tension in the air. Alex continued to jump joyfully, hugging his dinosaur. "Dad, why did Grandma say we're staying home?" Mia asked quietly. David opened his mouth but couldn't utter a word. He knew an explosion was coming and didn't know how to prevent it. "Mom, aren't we going to the ocean?" Alex stopped jumping and looked at his parents with alarm. Anne knelt before the children took their hands. "Sweethearts, go to your room for a minute. I need to talk to Dad." "But the taxi's waiting," Mia began. "I know, please go." The children reluctantly went to their room. Anne waited until the door closed behind them and turned to her husband. "I have good news," David said, attempting a smile. "Instead of our kids, my mother and brother are coming on vacation with us." "So you've already decided," she said quietly. "Last night when I told you what I thought about it." "Anne, listen to me." "Speak. You have 1 minute before I call the police." David blinked in confusion. "The police for what?" "For attempting to kidnap my children. Because without my consent, no one is taking them anywhere. Don't be dramatic. It's my mother, and the neighbor is a nice woman. I don't care who it is. No one has the right to make decisions about my children without my consent." The sound of an approaching car came from outside. Then a door slammed. Voices were heard. Susan had brought reinforcements. "Speak quickly." Anne crossed her arms over her chest. "Explain to me how you could agree to this knowing my opinion." "Mom was crying on the phone. Said Kevin would be devastated if he didn't solve his problems. That it's our family duty." Family duty. Anne felt everything boil inside her. What about your duty to your own children? Your duty to your wife who planned this vacation for 6 months? "We can go next time." Next time? And what if next time your brother has problems again, or your mother has another heart episode? The doorbell rang insistently and long. "That's them," David muttered. "Don't you dare open it," Anne said harshly. The bell rang again, then again. "Davy, we know you're home." Susan's voice came through. "Open up, we need to get the kids and go or we'll miss our flight." Anne looked at her husband. "Last chance. Tell them the plans have changed, that we're all flying as a family as planned." David swallowed painfully. "I can't. Mom's already organized everything. Kevin's waiting." "All right," Anne nodded. "Then I have some news for you, too." Anne didn't take her eyes off her husband. "Listen carefully, David. I have good news. Instead of our children, your mother and brother will go on vacation with you." David blinked, confused. "What do you mean?" "I mean this." Anne's voice became calm and firm at the same time. "I've had enough of your behavior. I've had enough of you being a mama's boy who can't say no to his mother. I've had enough of my opinion meaning nothing in this family. So I'm filing for divorce." David's face turned pale. And you can't be serious. More than serious, and the kids and I, as planned, are going to Miami to relax. What you do, I couldn't care less. Someone started banging on the door again. Davy, open up immediately. Kevin's depressed. He needs to go. Anne, wait. David grabbed his wife's arm. Let's discuss this calmly. You're just upset. Anne sharply pulled her arm free. Upset, David? I'm not upset. I'm furious. And you know what? For the first time in 8 years, I feel a sense of relief from this decision. She headed towards the kids' room. Mia, Alex, get your things. We're going. But Mom said, Mia began. Mom was mistaken. Plans have changed. The 3 of us are going. And Dad? Alex asked, peeking out from behind his sister. Dad has other plans. Grab your backpacks. The children exchanged glances but obediently grabbed their things. They sensed the tension but were used to trusting their mother. Anne, you can't take the children, David exclaimed, following her. I can and I will. They're my children too, and unlike you, I remember my obligations to them. The banging on the door continued. Now a male voice was added to Susan's. Probably Kevin had also gotten out of the car. Dave, open up, we're late, he yelled. Anne opened the front door. On the threshold stood Susan in a bright coat and Kevin in a crumpled jacket with 2 huge suitcases. Annie, finally, exclaimed her mother-in-law. Where are the kids? We need to hurry or you really will miss your flight. The children are coming with me, Anne said calmly, rolling out her suitcase. What do you mean with you? Susan looked at her son in confusion. Davy, explain it to her. There's nothing to explain. Anne took the children's hands. David made his choice. Now I've made mine. Mom, why does Uncle Kevin have suitcases? Mia asked quietly. Because he was planning to go on vacation instead of you, Anne answered honestly. The girl's eyes widened. Instead of us, but Dad forgot to ask if we wanted that. Alex frowned. And I don't want to stay with Grandma. I want to go to the ocean. And we will go to the ocean, Anne assured him. Annie, have you lost your mind? Susan fumed. How can the children go without their father? Very simply, they'll get on a plane and fly. But we've already organized everything. Kevin was so looking forward to it, he's depressed. Anne looked at Kevin. He stood there with a sour face shifting from foot to foot. There was no sign of depression in his appearance, more like annoyance that his plans were under threat. You know what, Susan? Anne said, picking up the children's backpacks. Your Kevin is a grown man. Let him organize his own vacation with his own money. But he doesn't have any money. He's being evicted. Then let him go to work like all normal people do. Kevin finally spoke up. Anne, come on, be a decent human being. I really need this trip. Anne looked at him intently. Kevin, tell me honestly, when was the last time you worked? Well, last month. I quit. And before that I worked too. For how many months? Kevin hesitated. Well, a couple of months. In 2 years, you've worked a total of maybe 5 months. The rest of the time, you've been freeloading off your brother and mother. And now, you want a vacation at our expense. Anne, David protested. Don't talk to my brother like that. And how should I talk to him as an equal? He's not an equal. He's a dependent. Susan wrung her hands. How can you talk about family like that? What family? Anne turned to her mother-in-law. Susan, have you ever asked what my children want? Or does my opinion not interest you? Oh, of course it does. Then why on the last day before vacation do you call and announce that the children are staying with you? Why didn't you ask beforehand? Her mother-in-law faltered. Well, Kevin's problems came up suddenly. Nothing sudden about it. He hasn't paid rent for 3 months. 3 months, Susan? That's not suddenness, it's irresponsibility. The taxi driver leaned out of the car. Excuse me, are we going or not? The meter's running. We're going, Anne said decisively. Kids in the car. Anne, wait. David blocked her path. You can't do this. Let's talk it over. Talk about what? You made your choice without consulting me. Now I'm making mine. But divorce, that's serious. Very serious. I'm tired of being the third wheel in the relationship between you and your mother. Mia tugged her mother's sleeve. Mom, what's a divorce? Anne knelt before her daughter. It's when Mommy and Daddy don't live together anymore. And will we live with you? Of course we'll live together. And with Daddy, you'll see Daddy, but he'll live separately. Alex frowned. But why? Because Daddy loves Grandma and Uncle Kevin more than us. Anne, David exclaimed, how can you say that? How else do I explain to the children why their vacation was given to Uncle Kevin? The children exchanged glances. Mia was visibly upset, but Alex unexpectedly shrugged. Well, okay. More ice cream for us then. Anne smiled. You've got the right idea. Annie, how could you? Susan wailed. Children without a father, it's just not right. You know what's not right when a grown man can't say no to his mother, when the interests of his wife and children are put last. But family should help each other. It should. But my family is my children, and your family is you, David and Kevin. We live separately now. The driver called out again. Miss, please decide. I have other fares. We're going. Anne opened the car door. Kids, get in. Mia and Alex obediently climbed into the car. Anne loaded the suitcase into the trunk. Anne, wait! David tried to grab her arm. I can change everything. I'll tell Mom I've changed my mind. Too late. Anne freed herself. You've already shown what's important to you. I don't want to fight for my own husband's attention anymore. But the children, they need a father. Children need a father who protects them, not one who's ready to give their vacation to his uncle. She got into the car and slammed the door. To the airport, she told the driver. The car pulled away. In the rear window, Anne saw David standing on the sidewalk, a bewildered look on his face, with Susan beside him, talking animatedly and waving her arms. Mom, is Dad not coming? Alex asked. No, sweetie, Dad's staying with Grandma and Uncle Kevin. And will we have fun without him? You bet we will. We'll do whatever we want. Mia looked thoughtfully out the window. Mom, do you really not love Dad anymore? Anne sighed. Mia, honey, I'm tired of Dad always choosing Grandma over us. And if he stops choosing Grandma, then we'll see. But for now, we're going on vacation, just the three of us. At the airport, Anne felt strangely light. No one to wait for, no plans to coordinate with anyone, no one to persuade. The kids quickly checked in and went through security. Mom, look, an airplane! Alex shouted excitedly, pressed against the window in the departure lounge. It's so big, Mia added. We're flying on one just like it, and this will be your first flight. The children were visibly thrilled by the upcoming adventure. Their parents' divorce seemed like something distant and not very understandable, but the plane and the ocean, that was real and exciting. Anne's phone rang. David. She declined the call, then another and another. Who's calling? Mia asked. Dad, but I don't feel like talking to him. He's probably upset. But he chose Uncle Kevin over us himself. A message came through. Anne, I'm sorry. I realize I made a mistake. Let's talk. Anne showed the message to Mia. What do you think? The girl thought seriously. Did he really understand, or is he just saying that? Good question. She typed a reply. David, if you truly understand, then sort things out with your family. We'll be relaxing in the meantime. An immediate reply. I'll sort it out, I promise. We'll see, Anne muttered. Mom, if Dad fixes things, will you forgive him? Alex asked. If he fixes things, we'll think about it. But for now, we're flying to the ocean. Boarding was announced. The children got excited, grabbing their backpacks. Mom, I'm scared, Mia confessed. Don't be scared, I'm right here, and we're flying towards our dream. On the plane, the children were glued to the windows. Alex commented on every movement. Mia photographed the clouds on her mom's phone. Mom, is it good that we flew without Dad? Alex suddenly asked. Why do you think so? Well, we're not arguing, and when Dad's with us, you're often sad. Anne was surprised by her child's observation. You noticed? Of course. You're always sad when Grandma comes over and when Dad talks on the phone with Uncle Kevin. And I thought I hid it well. Not really, the boy said honestly. Mia also turned to her mother. Mom, if Dad learns to say no to Grandma, will you forgive him? Mia, honey, that's a very difficult question. Dad is 34 and he still listens to Grandma more than his wife. But people can change, can't they? They can, but very rarely. But we can try to wait. Anne looked at her children. They were both looking at her hopefully. Okay, We'll give Dad a chance, but only one." The children smiled and pressed their faces to the windows again. 3 hours later, the plane landed in Miami. The hot air hit their faces like a warm embrace. Palm trees, sunshine, the smell of the ocean, everything they had dreamed of. "Mom, we're here," Alex shouted, running out of the airport terminal. "We're here, sweetie. Now our real vacation begins." A taxi took them to the hotel in half an hour. The ocean breeze was even better than in the pictures. A spacious lobby, friendly staff, an ocean view from the windows. "Welcome," smiled the girl at the reception. "Family suite for 4? "No." Anne said her mind made up. "Can we change it to a smaller room?" "Of course, we have a lovely room with 2 beds and an ocean view." "Excellent." While they were doing the paperwork, the children explored the lobby. Mia examined an aquarium with tropical fish. Alex tried to talk to a parrot in a cage. "Mom, is there a playground here?" Mia asked. "Yes, and a pool and entertainment and lots of interesting things." "And is the ocean close?" "Very close. A 3-minute walk." In the room, the children immediately rushed to the window. "Mom, look, the ocean!" Alex jumped with delight. "And the beach and people swimming," Mia added. Anne went to the window. The view was indeed stunning. Turquoise water, white sand, palm trees. Exactly the kind of vacation she had envisioned. The phone rang again. David. This time she answered. "Hello. Anne, thank God you answered. How was the flight?" "Fine. Are the kids tired?" "No, they're thrilled. Listen, I was thinking, maybe I could fly out right now. I'll buy a ticket." "David, where are your mother and brother?" A pause. "Home," he said uncertainly. "So you didn't send them away? Kevin still wants to go to Miami just as he planned." "Well, yeah, but I can explain to them." David, when will you learn to make decisions instead of explaining them? When will you say, no, Mom, we're going with the children and Kevin can solve his own problems? And just give me a chance. I gave you one this morning. You didn't use it. But now I understand. What exactly do you understand? That family is the 4 of us, not Mom and Kevin. David, you say that every time after every conflict, and then it all repeats. This time will be different. We'll see. In the meantime, we're relaxing without you. Anne, but do you really want a divorce? Anne looked at the children, who continued to marvel at the view from the window. You know, David, right now, for the first time in a long time, I feel calm. I don't have to think about what your mother will say. I don't have to adjust to Kevin's plans. I don't have to endure your excuses. But that's not normal. On the contrary, it's very normal. It's called living for myself. Mom, are we going to the beach? Alex asked. We will as soon as we change. David, I have to go. The kids are waiting for the ocean. Anne, wait. Goodbye. She hung up and turned to the children. Well, sweethearts, ready for your first ocean experience? Ready! They shouted in unison. Anne smiled. For the first time in a long time, she felt truly free. The next 2 weeks flew by like a single day. Anne realized she had forgotten what it was like to truly relax. No one called with requests for help. No one demanded her attention. No one ruined her mood with endless complaints. The children blossomed before her eyes. By the end of the first week, Mia was already swimming without floaties and knew the schedule of all the dolphins at the local marine park by heart. Alex found new treasures on the beach every day, shells, beautiful pebbles, pieces of coral which he stored in a special box. Mom, look what a shell I found. He would shout excitedly, running up to her sun lounger. It sings. Anne would put the shell to her ear and listen seriously. Yes, I hear it. The sea is telling fairy tales. In the evenings, they strolled along the boardwalk, ate ice cream, and listened to street musicians. The children fell asleep happy and tired, and Anne read on the terrace, listening to the sound of the waves. David called every day. At first, he begged her to let him come. Then he told her how he was explaining things to his mother and brother. Anne listened politely, but without much interest. Anne, I told Mom I wouldn't interfere in your affairs anymore, he announced on the 5th day. Good, she replied calmly, and I explained to Kevin that he has to solve his own problems. Very good. You're not angry. David, I'm not angry. I'm just living my life. But when you come back, we'll talk, right? We'll see. On the 7th day of the vacation, an incident occurred that finally convinced Anne of the correctness of her decision. David sent a photo. He was standing next to Kevin in some cafe, both smiling. "We made up," he wrote. Kevin realized his mistakes. Anne showed the photo to the children. "Mom, Uncle Kevin looks happy," Mia remarked. "Yes, apparently he managed to solve his problems. And Dad looks happy too." "Yep, so everyone's content." Anne wrote back, "Glad everything is fine with you." David didn't call again that day. On the 9th day, the children met a family from Chicago, a couple with a daughter Mia's age. Olga, the girl's mother, turned out to be divorced and raising her daughter alone. "You know," she told Anne over evening coffee while the children played on the playground, "the first 6 months after the divorce were tough. But then I realized I no longer had to adapt to anyone." "And how did your daughter handle it?" "Better than I expected. Children adapt more easily than we think. The main thing is for the mother to be calm and confident." Anne looked at Mia and Alex, who were squealing with delight as they slid down the slide. In 2 weeks, they hadn't once asked why Dad hadn't come, as if they had accepted the new reality as a given. And seeing her father every weekend, "Yes, but that's his time with her. The rest of the time is mine. And you know what a joy it is to make decisions yourself without looking over your shoulder at someone else's opinion." That night, Anne lay awake for a long time listening to her children's breathing. Tomorrow, they were returning home to a new life, to a divorce. It was a little scary, but the thought of returning to her old life, where she would once again be the third wheel in her husband's relationship with his family, was much scarier. In the morning, while packing, Mia suddenly asked, "Mom, were we happy without Dad?" "What do you think?" "I was happy. You were smiling all the time." Alex nodded. "And we did whatever we wanted. And when Dad is with us, you're often sad. Kids, do you understand that when we get back, everything will be different?" "You'll live separately from Dad," Mia clarified. "Yes, and us with you, of course. And we'll see Dad." "Yes, but he'll live in a different place." The children exchanged glances. "Mom, can I be honest?" Alex asked seriously. "Of course. I like it when you're not sad, and when Dad chooses Grandma over us, you're always sad." Anne knelt before her son. "You understand everything, don't you?" "Yes, I'm a big boy now. I'm 5. "Yes, you are big." On the plane, the children slept almost the entire way, tired from their active vacation. Anne looked out the window, thinking about the upcoming changes. She would have to rent an apartment, transfer the children to a different daycare closer to their new home file for divorce. Lots of things to do, but all manageable. The main thing was that she would no longer depend on Susan's moods and Kevin's problems. They arrived in their home city in the evening. David was waiting at the airport with flowers. "Dad," Alex ran to him, but not with his former enthusiasm, more out of habit. Mia approached calmly, hugged him, but also without much emotion. "How was your vacation?" David asked, trying to catch Anne's eye. "Excellent," she replied neutrally. "Dad, we saw dolphins," Alex chattered, "and I learned to swim. And I collected a whole bunch of shells," Mia added. "That's great, I missed you." The children nodded politely, but Anne saw the meeting didn't evoke much enthusiasm. On the way home, David tried several times to start a serious conversation, but Anne answered in monosyllables. The children talked about their vacation, and that was enough to fill the awkward silences. At home, Anne immediately noticed changes. The apartment was impeccably clean, flowers stood on the table, and the refrigerator was stocked with the children's favorite foods. "You've made an effort," she remarked. "Anne, I need to talk to you," David said when the children had run off to their room to unpack their treasures. "Go ahead. I realized I was wrong. I really talked to Mom, explained that our family is more important. And what did she say? She was offended, of course. Said I was an ungrateful son, but I didn't give in. And Kevin found a job. True as a mover for now, but still." Anne nodded. "Good. Anne, I've really changed. Give me a chance to prove it." "David, you know what I realized these past 2 weeks?" "What?" that I feel good without the constant stress, without having to guess your mother's mood, without waiting for another request from Kevin, without your apologies and promises. But I said everything will change. You've said that many times. David fell silent. And the children, they need a father. They need a father who protects them, not one who's ready to give their vacation to his uncle. I won't do that again. David, you don't understand. It's not about a specific act. It's that you don't see us as a priority. For you, we're one of many obligations along with your mom, brother, and work. That's not true. It is true. And you know what? These past 2 weeks, I remembered who I was before marriage, confident, decisive, happy. I want to be like that again. Mia peeked out of the room. Mom, can we go to the zoo tomorrow? I promised the dolphins I'd tell them about other animals. Of course, sweetie. Is Dad coming with us? The girl asked, but there was no particular interest in her voice. Anne looked at David. Dad's busy. We'll go just the 3 of us. Mia nodded and ran back to her brother. See, Anne said, they're already used to us managing without you. The next day, Anne filed for divorce. David tried to protest but quickly realized her decision was final. And the apartment, he asked, keep it, we'll move out. Anne, why be so drastic? Because I want to live for myself and my children, not for your family. A month later, Anne and the children moved into a 2-bedroom apartment in a neighboring district. The children took the move as a new adventure. Mom, is there a playground here? Alex asked first thing. Yes, and a park nearby. Will Dad come on weekends? Alex asked. This line was duplicated in your original, and I kept the flow of the conversation, Alex thought, and nodded. Okay. And on weekdays, we'll do whatever we want. Whatever we want. David did indeed come every weekend, taking the children for the day to the movies, to parks, buying them toys. The children returned content, but without their former enthusiasm. Dad asked if you want to get back together, Mia reported one day after a visit. And what did you say? That you're not sad like this anyway. One evening, 3 months after the divorce, the doorbell rang. Susan stood on the threshold with a cake in her hands. Annie, dear, may I come in? Why? Anne asked calmly, not inviting her in. Well, we're family. I want to see my grandchildren. Susan, we're not family anymore, and you see the grandchildren when they're with David. But the children miss their grandmother, Kids, Anne called out. Grandma's here. Mia and Alex peeked out of their room, greeted her politely but without enthusiasm. See, Anne said, they've said hello. Now you can go. Annie, how could you? I brought a cake. Thanks, no need. We don't eat store-bought cakes. Susan stood there bewildered for another minute and left. Mom, were you rude to Grandma? Mia remarked. No, sweetie, I was honest. Grandma is used to everyone giving in to her, but I won't anymore. Is that right? Very right. You need to protect your boundaries. A year passed. Anne found a new job. The children started at a good school near their home. Life settled down. David still hoped for a reconciliation, but Anne was adamant. She met an interesting man, a colleague from work, but wasn't rushing into a serious relationship. For now, freedom and peace were enough for her. Mom, are you happy? Alex asked one day. Very happy. And if we hadn't divorced Dad, then I wouldn't have been happy. Then it's good we divorced, Anne hugged her son. You know what's most important? What? That you're growing up in a family where Mom is content with her life. And a content mom is the best thing children can have. In the summer, they went to Miami again, just the 3 of them. David offered to join, but Anne refused. This is our tradition, she said, just the 3 of us. On the plane, Alex, who had already turned 6, said seriously, Mom, it's good that you don't love Dad anymore. Why do you think so? Because you became cheerful and we became closer. Mia nodded. Mom, if Dad completely changes, will you forgive him? Anne thought. Mia, honey, there are things that can't be fixed. Dad will always be his mother's son, and he'll never change the way he needs to. But we feel sorry for him. Don't feel sorry for him. He made his choice, and he's happy with his mother and brother, and we're happy with you. So that's excellent. This year's vacation was even better than the last. The children had become more independent. Anne could read on the beach while they played in the water under the lifeguard's supervision. In the evenings, they strolled along the boardwalk, and Anne told the children how important it was to be able to say no, protect their boundaries, and not let other people control their lives. "Mom, if I grow up and marry a girl who listens to her mom more than me," Alex asked, "then you'll get divorced and find another one." "What if she's good but her mom is bad?" "Alex, remember this. Good people don't let bad parents control their lives. If a person is 30 and can't say no to their mom, they're not ready for a family." Mia listened attentively. "Mom, I won't be a mom like Grandma." "You won't, because you see what it leads to." On the last day of their vacation, they sat on the beach watching the sunset. The children were building a sandcastle. Anne photographed them. "Mom, will we come back again next year?" Mia asked. "Absolutely. And Dad won't come again." "He won't." "Good," Alex said decisively. "We're better off just the three of us." Anne smiled. The children were right. They really were better off just the three of them. Without constant stress, without the need to adapt to others' plans, without the perpetual feeling of guilt for not being able to please everyone. New plans awaited them at home. Mia enrolled in art school, Alex in a swimming club. Life was full of interesting events and prospects. David still called on holidays, asked about their well-being, hoped for a miracle. But Anne knew there would be no miracle, because she had finally understood a simple truth: happiness cannot be built on compromises with one's conscience. And the children. The children were growing up in a family where their mother was happy, and that was the most important thing.